67 years on this earth, and the most dangerous thing I ever did was learn how to be patient. My name is Jonathan McCarthy. I lived in a cream-colored colonial on Birchwood Lane in Naperville, Illinois. Nice neighborhood. Good schools, even though our kids were long grown. The kind of street where neighbors wave from driveways and nobody means it. I had a wife named Paula. A business. A life that looked from the outside like something worth envying. It wasn't. Welcome back to Dad's True Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember the people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. You're going to love it here. On a Tuesday night in October, at exactly 11:04 p.m., my wife walked through the front door smelling like a hotel minibar, looked me dead in the eyes across the kitchen table, and smiled like she'd just won something. I was finishing a bowl of leftover chicken soup. Homemade. I made it myself. You know what happened today, Jonathan? She said. Not asked. Said, like she was reading from a script she'd been rehearsing in the car. I set my spoon down, looked at her. I assume it wasn't good, since you've been ignoring my calls since 9 this morning. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. That smirk, God, I can still see it, spreading across her face like a crack in dry concrete. I had a one-night stand with Craig. She paused for effect. My boss. And honestly, I'd do it again. The kitchen clock ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, somebody's dog barked twice and quit. I picked my spoon back up. Soup's getting cold, I said. Here's what Paula expected. Tears, maybe. Shouting, definitely. Plates thrown. Doors slammed. Some grand theatrical implosion that would confirm to her that she still had the power to detonate me. That after 31 years of marriage, she could still reach inside my chest and squeeze. Here's what she got. A 67-year-old man finishing his soup. She didn't know it yet, but I'd stopped being the man she expected about 6 months ago. That's it? She said. Her voice had an edge now. Not guilt, not even defiance. Disappointment. Like I'd walked out of a movie before the big scene. I just told you I slept with Craig Hendricks and you're eating soup? It's good soup, I said. She stared at me for a long moment, then made a sound, half laugh, half disgust, and went upstairs. I sat there another 20 minutes, finished the soup, washed the bowl, dried it, put it away in the cabinet. Then I went to the garage, sat in my 2019 Ford F-150, and allowed myself exactly 4 minutes of feeling everything I wasn't going to feel in front of her. 4 minutes. Then it was just logistics. Let me tell you about Craig Hendricks. Craig was 51, recently divorced, and the kind of man who wore fitted blazers to casual Friday, and called everyone chief. He'd hired Paula 8 years ago as operations manager at Hendricks Logistics, a mid-size freight brokerage out of Lisle, about 12 minutes from our house. She'd climbed fast. She was good at her job, I'll give her that. Sharp, organized, the kind of person who could smile at you while mentally categorizing your weaknesses. I'd always admired that about her. Should have feared it instead. They'd had the affair before, I was almost certain. Not this exact version. Not with the dramatic confession at the kitchen door. But something had been wrong for at least 2 years. The late nights that didn't match the timesheets. The new laugh she had, lighter, more performed, that she only used on her phone. The way she stopped asking about my day like she used to, and started giving me the specific kind of silence that isn't peace, it's absence. But here's the thing about being 67 and having built a life with someone for 3 decades. You don't rush. You catalog. You make sure. I'd made sure. My business was called McCarthy & Associates Property Management. We'd started it together in 2003, me with the construction background, Paula with the operations brain. We managed residential properties across DuPage County. At our peak, we had 42 units under contract and a reputation solid enough that referrals came without asking. It was, on paper, equally ours. Keyword, on paper. I never fully understood why she still went ahead to work for Craig 8 years ago, even with her stake in McCarthy & Associates sitting right there. She'd said his company was bigger, that she didn't just want to spend the rest of her life in property management. She wanted to try something new. I respected that, handed her day-to-day responsibilities to a manager, told her to go build something for herself. Turns out she did. Just not what I had in mind. I didn't quite get it then, but I get it now. What Paula didn't know, what I'd made very certain she wouldn't know, was that 14 months ago, I'd sat down with our attorney, a sharp and mercifully discreet woman named Christine Knight, over at her office on Washington Street in downtown Naperville, and I'd begun a quiet, careful, entirely legal restructuring of McCarthy and Associates. It started with a conversation I'd had with my oldest friend, Dave Kowalski. Dave and I go way back. We'd worked construction together in our 30s, sweated through enough Chicago winters to earn the right to say whatever we wanted to each other. We'd met for lunch at Quigley's Pub on a Wednesday in August, the year before all this, and I told him what I suspected. "You think she's stepping out?" Dave had asked, mouthful of a Reuben sandwich, completely unbothered. "I think she's been somewhere else for a long time," I said. "I don't know if it's a person yet. So what are you gonna do?" I'd stirred my coffee, looked out the window at the lunch crowd on Jefferson Avenue, all those people moving fast, like they had somewhere to be. "I'm gonna find out for certain," I said, "and then I'm gonna make sure that when I go, if I go clean." Dave had put his sandwich down at that, looked at me seriously for maybe the first time in 30 years. "Jonathan, how long have you been thinking about this?" "Long enough," I said, to stop being emotional about it. He didn't know then what I meant. He would later. By October, by the night of the soup, here is what was true. McCarthy and Associates had been quietly, methodically reorganized over the preceding 6 months. My name remained on the public-facing documents, the website, the letterhead. But the operating entity, the one that held the contracts, the client relationships, the actual machinery of the business, that had been restructured under a new LLC, one that Christine had helped me establish with the kind of careful precision that doesn't leave fingerprints. Paula was still listed as co-owner of the original shell. The original shell had 3 clients, a storage unit full of old filing boxes, and a checking account with $400 in it. The new entity had everything else. She'd been co-owner of a ghost for 6 months, and come home every night, none the wiser. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not a vindictive man by nature. I was a carpenter's son from Joliet who married his college girlfriend and worked hard enough to build something real. I believed in fairness. I paid my taxes. I held doors open. I made chicken soup from scratch on Tuesdays. But I had also watched my father get gutted in a divorce that left him with nothing but his truck and his dignity, and my father's one piece of advice delivered in a parking lot outside a courthouse was this: "Jonathan, when it's over, make sure you're the one who decided when." I'd never forgotten that. The joint checking account, our household account, the one Paula used for groceries and her biweekly manicures at Lux Nail Bar on Route 59, had, as of the Monday morning before her confession, a balance of $0.14. I had moved everything to a separate account in my name only, at a different bank entirely, the previous Friday afternoon. Methodical, unhurried, like a man paying a utility bill. The 14 cents I'd left on purpose. Call it a sense of humor. The savings, the real savings, the 31 years of compounding decisions and disciplined sacrifice, had been moved in increments over 4 months, carefully, in amounts that didn't trigger automatic flags. Christine had advised me on the structure. Everything I did was legal. Everything I did was documented. Everything I did was survivable in court, which is the only standard that matters when you're 67 and you've decided to stop waiting. I went back inside from the garage at 11:41 p.m. The house was quiet. The lights upstairs were off. Paula had gone to sleep, actually gone to sleep, with the breezy confidence of a woman who believed tomorrow would look like today. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, looked around at the cream-colored cabinets, the subway tile backsplash we'd argued about for 3 weeks in 2015, the little hook by the back door where I'd hung my keys every night for 19 years. Then I went to the hall closet and pulled out 3 bags I'd packed 4 days earlier. My clothes, my documents, every original, every record, everything with my name on it, and wrapped carefully in 2 layers of moving blankets, my mother's portrait, a small oil painting of Mary McCarthy done in 1974 by a local artist in Joliet, the only truly irreplaceable thing in the house. She was coming with me. She always was. I loaded the bags into the truck in 3 quiet trips. At 12:17 a.m. on Wednesday morning, I backed out of the driveway on Birchwood Lane for the last time. I did not leave a note. I did not call. I didn't need to. She'd given me everything I needed at the kitchen door. And when Paula McCarthy woke up at 7:30 the next morning, walked downstairs expecting coffee in bed, and found instead an empty house, an empty account, and a business she thought she co-owned that was worth exactly $400. She was going to laugh. I was counting on it, because the people who laugh first are always the ones who haven't checked everything yet. There's a specific kind of silence that fills a house when the person who built half of it is gone. Not peaceful silence. I mean the kind of silence that has weight, that presses against the walls and makes every familiar thing look slightly wrong, like furniture rearranged 2 inches in the night. Paula found that silence at 7:31 a.m. on a Wednesday in October. I know the exact time because Dave Kowalski was parked one street over in his Silverado, sipping gas station coffee and watching the front of the house on Birchwood Lane, at my request, and he texted me at 7:31, light came on upstairs. I was already 40 minutes away, sitting in a corner booth at a Denny's off I-88 near Aurora, eating eggs I didn't taste, watching my phone like it was a detonator. I want to be clear about something. I didn't enjoy this, not the way people imagine revenge is enjoyed. All warmth and satisfaction. What I felt that morning was closer to the feeling after a surgery, relieved it was done, exhausted by what it cost, quietly certain it was necessary. Dave texted again at 7:44. She just opened the front door, looked up and down the street, went back in. Then at 7:52, she's on the phone, pacing in the kitchen window. You want me to stay? I typed back, give it another hour. He sent a coffee cup emoji. Dave communicates primarily in emojis when he's trying not to editorialize. It's his version of diplomacy. The call came at 8:09. I let it ring 4 times, not to be dramatic, just because I was chewing toast and I believed in finishing what I started. Jonathan. Her voice was controlled, careful. The voice she used in business meetings when something had gone sideways and she needed to appear like it hadn't. Where are you? Good morning, Paula. Don't. A beat. Where are your things? With me. Silence. Then, and I want to give her credit, because she was nothing if not composed. Okay, so you needed space. I understand that. What I said last night was cruel. And Paula, I think we should talk about this like adults, because 31 years doesn't just... Paula. She stopped. Check the bank account, I said, then call me back. I hung up. I went back to my toast. She didn't call back in 5 minutes. She didn't call back in 10. I knew what she was doing. She was sitting at the kitchen island with her laptop open, logging into the joint account, seeing the 0, telling herself there was an error, calling the bank's automated line, entering the account number again, waiting, refreshing, watching $400 become the whole picture. No, wait, that was the business account. Dave texted at 8:24. She just got in her car. I texted Christine Knight. Christine responded in under a minute. I've been expecting your text. Everything is in order. Call me after 10. Christine Knight was 54, Yale Law, and had the energy of a woman who had seen every variety of human foolishness, and had long since stopped being surprised by any of it. She'd handled my restructuring with the efficiency of a Swiss watchmaker, and the discretion of a priest. I trusted her completely, which was something I could say about very few people and 0 institutions. She had warned me back in September that the window between Paula discovering the situation and Paula lawyering up would be short. She's smart, Christine had said, reading through the documents I'd brought her. How smart? Smart enough to confess to get ahead of something, I'd said. She thought if she told me first, she'd control the narrative. Christine had looked up at me over her reading glasses. Did it work? She told me last night. I already moved the accounts last Friday. Christine had smiled, small, professional, genuinely impressed. Jonathan, you continue to be my favorite client. I didn't tell her she was competing with my chicken soup for the title. Paula drove to the office of a family law attorney named, I would find out later, Gerald Fitch, on Ogden Avenue in Downers Grove. Gerald Fitch had a 3-star Google rating, a website that looked like it was built in 2011, and a reputation as a brawler, the kind of lawyer who made up in aggression what he lacked in elegance. She'd found him fast. I'd give her that. She was in his office by 9:15 a.m. I know because my daughter Renee lives in Evanston and had been in my corner since I'd quietly briefed her 3 weeks prior, spotted Paula's Acura in the parking lot while driving past on her way to work. Renee texted me a photo and 4 words. Dad. She moved fast. I texted back. So did I. What Gerald Fitch was about to discover when he started pulling records was that there wasn't much left to fight over in the way she was imagining. The house on Birchwood Lane was in both our names. Yes, that was the one card she held. But McCarthy and Associates, the real McCarthy and Associates, the one with the 41 active property management contracts, the operating accounts, the equipment, the client relationships built over 20 years. That entity didn't have Paula's name on it. It had never had Paula's name on it. The original LLC she co-owned was still there, pristine, untouched. $400 and a storage unit on Napier Boulevard containing 11 years of archived paper files and a broken Keurig. I'd left the Keurig on purpose too. I'm not a monster. Christine called me at 10:03. She's retained Gerald Fitch, Christine said, without preamble. I heard. He's going to come at the business first. That's where he'll think the value is. And when he looks, he'll find exactly what we left for him to find. I could hear the mild satisfaction in her voice. The original LLC is clean, properly documented, and worth approximately $414 as of this morning. The 14 cents is a nice touch, by the way. I thought so, Jonathan. She paused. He's also going to argue dissipation of marital assets. He'll claim you moved money to deprive her. Can he prove dissipation? He can argue it. Whether he can prove it is a different matter. We documented every transfer. Everyone has a legitimate business purpose attached to it. The restructuring was a business decision made 14 months ago, well before any legal action. Your paper trail is... She paused as if choosing the word carefully. Conservative. I was a carpenter, I said. We measure twice. I drove back to Naperville at noon. Not to Birchwood Lane. I'd taken a room at an extended stay on Deal Road. Nothing fancy, the kind of place with thin walls and a coffee maker bolted to the counter. Room 114. I'd paid a month in advance in cash. Dave met me there for lunch. He brought sandwiches from Portillo's, Italian beef, dipped the way God intended, and sat on the edge of my bed while I ate at the small desk by the window. She called her sister, Dave said. How do you know that? He shrugged. Brenda told Mike. Mike told Carol. Carol called me this morning asking if I knew where you were. He unwrapped his sandwich. Small town. It's a city of 150,000 people. And yet, he took a bite. Carol says Paula's telling people you had some kind of breakdown, that you left in the night without warning, and she's worried about you. I considered this. She's managing the story, I said. Yep, she's going to paint me as unstable, erratic. A man who disappeared in the night without provocation. Seems like it. Dave looked at me. You okay with that? I took a long drink of water. Outside the window, a maintenance guy was blowing leaves across the parking lot, completely losing the battle with the October wind. Was I okay with it? I was 67 years old. I'd survived a father's divorce, a construction business in a recession, 2 kids, 1 miscarriage Paula and I had never fully talked through, and 31 years of a marriage that had quietly hollowed itself out like a tree that looks fine until the storm hits. Let her tell the story, I said. Stories have sequels. Dave nodded slowly. You've got something else. It wasn't a question. Dave, I said, do you remember back in 2019 I told you about the conversation I had with Eddie Marsh? Dave's sandwich stopped halfway to his mouth. Eddie Marsh was a semi-retired private investigator who operated out of an office above a dry cleaner on Chicago Avenue in Naperville. Dave had referred me to him years ago for a tenant background check situation. You hired Eddie? Dave said. 14 months ago, I said, the same week I called Christine. Dave put his sandwich down entirely. Jonathan, what did Eddie find? I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and pulled out a folded manila envelope, laid it on the desk between us. I didn't need to open it. I had it memorized. The affair with Craig Hendricks didn't start 2 years ago, I said. It started 4.5 years ago. There were also some financial irregularities in the way Paula was managing the operations side of our business. Payments to a vendor called Apex Property Consulting. Invoices that don't correspond to any services we actually received. Dave stared at me. How much? He said quietly. Over 4 years? I said. $63,000, give or take. The room was very quiet. She was stealing from your company, Dave said. She was stealing from our company, I said. Which is an important distinction, because it means she was stealing from herself too. Which tells you something about how confident she was that I'd never look. She wasn't wrong to be confident. For 4 years I hadn't looked. But 14 months ago I had started looking, and I couldn't stop. Dave left at 2 o'clock. I sat in room 114 for a while after, watching the parking lot, thinking about nothing and everything simultaneously, the way you do when a decision you made a long time ago is finally irrevocably in motion. My phone buzzed at 3:47 p.m. Not Paula, not Christine. It was a number I didn't recognize. Chicago area code. I answered. Mr. McCarthy. A man's voice, professional. Careful. My name is Tom Greer. I'm a reporter with the Chicago Tribune's business desk. I've been looking into some irregularities at Hendricks Logistics, specifically relating to a vendor payment scheme involving an Apex Property Consulting. I understand you may have some familiarity with that name. I looked out the window. The leaf blower guy had given up entirely, just standing there in the wind, holding his machine, leaves doing whatever they wanted. I hadn't contacted Tom Greer. I hadn't contacted anyone at the Tribune, which meant someone else had. And the list of people who knew about Apex Property Consulting was very, very short. Mr. McCarthy? Tom Greer said again. Are you there? I'm here, I said. I just needed a second, because I suddenly understood that the game I thought I was playing, careful, quiet, controlled, had a piece on the board I hadn't put there. And in my experience, the most dangerous moves are always the ones you didn't make yourself. The most powerful thing a man can do in a room full of people expecting him to fall apart is simply not fall apart. I called Tom Greer back at 4:15 p.m. from the parking lot of the extended stay on Deal Road, standing next to my truck with the October wind cutting through my jacket like it had somewhere to be. Before we talk, I need to know who pointed you in my direction. I protect my sources, Mr. McCarthy. I'm not asking for a name. I'm asking for a category. Was it someone inside Hendricks Logistics? A longer pause. The tip came from someone with direct knowledge of the vendor payment structure. I thought about the short list of people who knew about Apex Property Consulting. Me, Christine, Eddie Marsh, Dave, as of 4 hours ago, and one other person. Craig Hendricks. The man who'd been sleeping with my wife for 4.5 years had apparently decided that when the ship started listing, he wasn't going down with it. He'd thrown Paula overboard first and called the Tribune on his way to the lifeboat. There is a specific kind of justice the universe delivers that you couldn't have planned better yourself. I've learned to recognize it and get out of its way. Mr. Greer, I said, I think we should meet. We met the following morning at a coffee shop on Washington Street in downtown Naperville, 2 blocks from Christine's office. Tom Greer was younger than his voice suggested, maybe 38. Corduroy jacket, the alert eyes of a man who made his living reading people quickly. He had a recorder on the table before I even sat down. I brought documents. I set Eddie Marsh's manila envelope on the table. I wanted on the record that I'm not providing these for personal reasons. I'm providing them because $63,000 of fraudulent vendor payments passed through a business with my name on it, and I will not have my name on fraud. Tom Greer looked at the envelope the way a man looks at something he's been searching for without knowing it. He opened it, read for 4 minutes without speaking. Then he looked up. Did your wife know you had this? No. Does she know you're here? Paula hasn't known where I've been for the last 48 hours. She's been a little busy managing her narrative. He almost smiled. Almost. One more question. The restructuring of McCarthy and Associates, when did that happen? 14 months ago. Documented, legal, and entirely unrelated to any of this. He nodded slowly, closed the envelope, and slid it back across the table. I'll need certified copies. Christine Knight's office will have them ready by noon. He blinked. You already called your attorney this morning? Mr. Greer, I said, picking up my coffee. I called my attorney 14 months ago. I was back in room 114 on a Thursday morning when Christine texted me the link. I read it sitting on the edge of the bed in my undershirt, with a gas station coffee going cold on the nightstand. The headline was measured and professional, the way Tribune headlines tend to be. But the content was not measured at all. Tom Greer had done his homework. The piece detailed the Apex Property Consulting scheme in full. Fraudulent invoices, wire transfers, a shell vendor with no employees, no office, and no services rendered. It named Hendricks Logistics prominently. It named Craig Hendricks by name. And buried in the 4th paragraph, with the kind of casual devastation that good reporters deploy like a scalpel, it named the operations manager who administered the payments on the McCarthy and Associates side, Paula Louise McCarthy. Her full name. In the Chicago Tribune, I read that paragraph 3 times. Then I finished my coffee, got dressed, and called Dave. "You see it?" Dave said, before I could speak. I saw it. Carol's already texting everyone on the street. Brenda called Mike. Mike called me. The whole neighborhood knows by 9 a.m. Good. Dave's voice dropped a register. Gerald Fitch dropped her case yesterday afternoon. I heard it from his paralegal's cousin. He cited irreconcilable conflicts of interest. I sat with that for a moment. Fitch had been billing Paula to fight me for the business, the same business the Tribune had just reported she'd been stealing from. The same business that as of 14 months ago had been quietly restructured out from under her. He wasn't just fighting a losing case. He was potentially standing next to a client about to face criminal exposure. Even a 3-star lawyer knows when to walk away. She's got no attorney, no account, no business, and her name in the paper, Dave said. What does she do now? That is entirely her problem. The divorce was finalized 11 weeks later on a gray January morning in a DuPage County courtroom that smelled like carpet cleaner and institutional despair. Paula had retained a new attorney, a younger woman named Elaine Cole, who did competent work but had inherited a case with nothing left to argue about. The house sold in 30 days. After the mortgage payoff and the split, Paula walked away with $82,000 and a storage unit on Napier Boulevard. She kept the Keurig. I kept everything else. Craig Hendricks settled with Hendricks Logistics' internal auditors, who had apparently been building their own file long before Tom Greer called me, and quietly resigned in December. Last I heard, he was consulting somewhere in Arizona. Good weather for a man running from his reputation. The DuPage County State's attorney opened a preliminary inquiry into the Apex property consulting payments in February. Christine told me not to expect quick movement. These things take time. But the file existed. It had Paula's name on it, and files, in my experience, have a way of staying open. On the morning the divorce was finalized, I drove back to Birchwood Lane one time. Not to the house. The new owners had already started painting the shutters a color I wouldn't have chosen. I just parked at the end of the street for a few minutes, watched the neighborhood do what neighborhoods do at 10 in the morning. A woman walking a dog, a UPS truck making a delivery, somebody's sprinkler system running in January, which is the kind of thing you only notice when you've got time to notice things. I thought about 31 years, about the good parts which existed, about the kitchen we'd argued over, and the 2 kids we'd raised in that house who turned out better than either of us deserved. About my mother's portrait, which was now hanging in my new apartment on Eagle Street in downtown Naperville. 3rd floor, big windows, nobody's name on it but mine. I didn't feel triumphant. I want to be honest about that. What I felt was something quieter, the particular peace of a man who saw something coming, prepared with everything he had, and didn't flinch when the moment arrived. 67 years old. Still standing, I put the truck in drive, pulled away from Birchwood Lane, and didn't look in the rearview mirror. I'd measured twice. I was done cutting. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being a part of this sphere.